Imagine the open highways of America in the early 1970s. Gas was cheap, freedom was abundant, and the idea of hitting the road in a home on wheels was more than a dream. It was becoming a cultural movement. Families packed up, retirees set out to explore, and young adventurers embraced the nomadic lifestyle. But there was a problem. Back then, most motorhomes were clunky, box-shaped, and painfully impractical. They were built by small RV companies that took truck chassis from automakers, slapped a box on the back, and called it a home. The result? Heavy, awkward vehicles that handled like a lumbering school bus. Driving one was less freedom of the open road and more white-knuckled survival mission. That's when General Motors, the world's largest automaker, at the time, did something nobody expected. They looked at the RV market, saw its rapid growth, and made a decision that shocked the industry. Instead of just supplying chassis to RV builders, GM would do what no other major manufacturer dared to attempt: build a motorhome entirely in-house. From the ground up, the idea was bold, risky, even reckless. After all, motorhomes weren't exactly GM's territory. They were known for cars like the Cadillac Eldorado and the Chevrolet Corvette, not for rolling vacation homes. But the 1970s was a decade of experimentation, and GM believed it could reinvent the American road trip. Emerged was a machine so futuristic, so sleek, that it looked like it had rolled straight out of a science fiction movie. This wasn't just another RV, this was the GMC Motorhome between 1973 and 1978. General Motors produced just over 12,900 of these marvels. They were unlike anything the world had ever seen. Smooth aerodynamic curves replaced the boxy designs. Of the past, large panoramic windows made the interior feel open and connected to the world outside and underneath the skin. A front-wheel drive system borrowed from the Oldsmobile Toronado gave it handling no other RV could match. It wasn't just a motorhome, it was a revolution on wheels. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating. The GMC Motorhome wasn't just a technical experiment. It became a cultural icon, appearing in movies, TV shows, and even NASA operations. It drew the attention of celebrities, engineers, and dreamers alike. And decades later, it remains one of the most collectible and beloved RVs ever built. So how did this unlikely machine come to be? What drove General Motors, a titan of the automotive world, to gamble on such a strange, ambitious project? And why, after only 6 short years, did it disappear as suddenly as it arrived? To answer that, we need to step back into the golden age of innovation when the auto industry was booming and GM stood at the very top of the world. In the early 70s, the American automotive landscape was thriving. Gas prices were low, suburban families were growing, and road trips weren't just vacations, they were part of the culture. The interstate highway system, built in the decades prior, had unlocked the entire continent for travel. People wanted to explore, to drive, to see the country like never before. The RV industry was exploding, but it was still dominated by small players. Winnebago had made headlines with affordable motorhomes, but their designs were still boxy, awkward, and slow. For GM, this looked like a golden opportunity. They had the resources, the engineering power, and the design expertise to create something better, something that could dominate this new frontier. But GM wasn't just thinking about sales. In many ways, the motorhome was a statement. It was about showing the world that General Motors could build more than just cars. They could take on an entire industry and raise the standard of what people expected from a Motora Workshowme. What followed was one of the most daring projects in GM history. Engineers were pulled from different divisions, designers were challenged to throw out the rulebook, and a team was assembled with a single mission to create the ultimate motorhome, one that looked futuristic, drove like a car, and gave families the freedom to travel without compromise. The gamble would pay off in ways GM never imagined, but it would also come with challenges that no one inside the company could have predicted, because while the GMC Motorhome would go on to earn a legendary reputation, its short production run left just as many questions as it did answers. Why end such a groundbreaking project so soon? And why, nearly 50 years later, do people still obsess over this vehicle as if it were a rolling piece of art? The story of the GMC Motorhome isn't just about a vehicle, it's about a dream. Dream of freedom, innovation, and daring to be different. And like all great stories, it comes with triumphs, setbacks, and a legacy that refuses to fade. The story of the GMC Motorhome begins in the late 1960s. a time when General Motors was riding high as the world's largest automaker. GM wasn't just a car company. It was a symbol of American industrial dominance. But within the executive halls of Detroit, there was a restless energy. The auto market was evolving, competitors were experimenting, and GM's leadership wanted a bold project that would showcase the company's unmatched engineering power. That bold project would become the GMC Motorhome. At first, it sounded like an impossible idea. Recreational vehicles were not new. By the late 60s, the highways of America were dotted with boxy, clunky motorhomes built by small, independent manufacturers. Most of them were loud, slow, and handled like oversized delivery trucks. They were practical for camping, yes, but glamorous. Hardly for GM executives, that was an opportunity. If they could take this niche market and inject it with the sleekness of a car and the comfort of a modern home, they could create something no one had ever seen before. The project was pitched not just as a motorhome, but as a revolution in personal travel. Imagine, the engineers argued, an RV that didn't feel like driving a lumbering box on wheels, but something closer to a luxury sedan, one that could handle highways with stability, ride with comfort, and look futuristic enough to turn heads at every campground. To make that vision real, GM's truck and coach division was tasked with the project. This wasn't some side experiment. It had full corporate backing, and the design team was told to throw out the rulebook. From day one, the goal was clear: create a motorhome unlike anything the public had ever experienced. The first radical decision was in the drivetrain. Almost every motorhome at the time used rear-wheel drive, with long, heavy drive shafts and towering frames that made the ride unstable. GM's engineers decided to flip convention on its head. They pulled the drivetrain from the Oldsmobile Toronado, a front-wheel drive luxury car, and scaled it up for RV use. This was genius. By placing the power up front, the floor of the motorhome could be lower, the ride smoother, and the handling dramatically improved. Then came the suspension. Instead of stiff leaf springs that made traditional RVs bounce down the road, GM equipped the motorhome with an air suspension system borrowed from their bus technology. This gave the vehicle a cloud-like ride that no competitor could match. Even skeptics who doubted the project admitted that the motorhome handled unlike anything else on the road. But GM wasn't just building a machine, they were crafting an experience. The design team turned their attention to the body. Most RVs were essentially rectangular boxes, cheap to manufacture but dreadful in appearance. GM's designers wanted sleek, flowing lines, more like an airplane fuselage than a delivery van. They sculpted an aerodynamic aluminum frame with fiberglass panels, giving the motorhome a futuristic profile. At 23 or 26 feet long, it was still big, but it looked nothing like the clumsy rectangles of the competition. The interiors were another revelation. GM partnered with top designers to create layouts that maximized space while feeling luxurious. Wide panoramic windows bathed the cabin in light, giving passengers the feeling of openness. Convertible sofas, compact kitchens, and clever storage. Solutions made the motorhome practical without sacrificing comfort. It was, in every sense, a mobile home reimagined for a new generation. But for all its innovation, the project wasn't without controversy inside. Some executives worried that the company was straying too far from its core identity as an automaker. Building cars was one thing, but designing and manufacturing entire houses on wheels, that was a risk. Others pointed out the cost. Developing a completely new vehicle platform wasn't cheap, and unlike passenger cars, the RV market was small. Was there really enough demand to justify this gamble? Still, the momentum was unstoppable. Prototypes were built, tested, and refined. When early reviewers got behind the wheel, they were shocked. For the first time, a motorhome didn't feel terrifying to drive. It accelerated smoothly, handled curves with stability, and even looked stylish, parked in a driveway. By 1972, the project was ready for the world. GM officially unveiled the motorhome to stunned audiences, promising not just a vehicle, but a new way of life. The ultimate in family travel, the ads proclaimed. Designed and built by General Motors, it wasn't just hype, it was a declaration. GM had entered a market no one expected them to touch, and they were about to change it forever. Beneath the futuristic curves of the GMC motorhome lay a secret most RV buyers never expected. Unlike the lumbering truck-based motorhomes of the era, this one wasn't built on a clunky chassis borrowed from a delivery van or school bus. It had been engineered from the ground up, and what GM placed under the hood was nothing short of radical. Instead of rear-wheel drive, the GMC Motorhome used front-wheel drive from the Oldsmobile Tornado. This put the engine and transmission up front, creating a flat, open floor that felt more like a futuristic lounge than an RV. Power came from a massive 455 cubic inch V8 with nearly 300 horsepower, later downsized to a 403 to meet emissions rules. But the 455 remains the legend, giving surprising agility to a 12,000-pound machine. The real magic was the air suspension. While other RVs bounced like carnival rides, the GMC glided on airbags and leveling valves, hugging corners and staying stable even in crosswinds. Add in front disc brakes, oversized rear drums, and a low center of gravity, and this RV could actually stop and steer with confidence. Behind the wheel, it felt less like a motorhome and more like a spaceship. Panoramic glass, a silky ride, and that V8 rumble made cruising Route 66 unforgettable. Yes, it drank fuel like water, and towing was limited. But for families, it was easy to drive, elegant, and decades ahead of its time. It was a rolling contradiction. Luxurious, yet practical, powerful, yet smooth, futuristic, yet very much of its time. And as word spread, it began to capture imaginations far beyond RV parks and campgrounds. Hollywood started calling, celebrities began buying, and the GMC Motorhome was no longer just a vehicle. It was becoming a cultural icon by the mid-1970s. The GMC Motorhome had rolled far beyond the showroom floor and into the fabric of American life. It wasn't just a new kind of RV, it was a new way of thinking about travel. Step inside, and you immediately knew this wasn't your typical boxy camper. Gone were the cramped, dark, and cluttered interiors of traditional motorhome. In their place was a bright, open space designed to feel more like a modern apartment than a rolling cabin. The flat floor, made possible by the front-wheel drive design, changed everything. Families could move around without tripping over a drive shaft. Hump. Designers had room to experiment, swiveling captain's chairs, full kitchens, fold-out beds, and clever storage solutions tucked into every corner. Some layouts even included shag carpeting, wood-paneled walls, and avocado green appliances, giving the motorhome the full 70s vibe. And then there was the view. The enormous wraparound windshield didn't just let in light, it made the entire journey part of the living room experience. Sitting in the front seats felt almost cinematic, as if you were watching America unfold on a giant screen. For families, the motorhome wasn't just transportation, it was a mobile dream house. Parents could cook meals while the kids played board games at the dinette. At night, beds folded out, curtains were drawn, and the vehicle transformed into a cozy home parked in the middle of nowhere. Vacations no longer revolved around motels or restaurants. Instead, the road itself became the destination. But it wasn't just families who fell in love. The GMC Motorhome caught the attention of the rich, the famous, and the adventurous. Frank Sinatra reportedly traveled in one. NASA even modified several motorhomes to use as astronaut transport shuttles during the Apollo and Space Shuttle programs. When the most advanced organization in the world trusted the GMC to carry their astronauts, it only cemented its reputation as something extraordinary. Hollywood also played its part. The motorhome made appearances in movies and TV shows. Its futuristic shape, instantly recognizable. To see one on screen was to instantly know the owner wasn't just another road traveler, but someone stylish, modern, and ahead of the curve. Even the aftermarket world embraced it. Customizers took the GMC and ran wild, transforming them into party buses, luxury executive shuttles, and even mobile laboratories. The sleek fiberglass body gave owners a blank canvas, and they weren't afraid to get creative. Yet, the cultural appeal went deeper than just glamour or design. The GMC Motorhome arrived at the perfect time. America in the 70s was restless. Families wanted to hit the open road, escape the cities, and rediscover the freedom of wide-open spaces. Air travel was still expensive for many, but the made road trips not only possible, but stylish and comfortable. It became a symbol of independence. The idea that you could bring your entire life with you, no matter where the road led. Park it by a beach, and you had an ocean view home. Park it in the mountains, and you had a cabin retreat. Park it on the side of the highway. And even there, it looked futuristic and elegant compared to the boxy RVs around it. But perhaps the motorhome's greatest legacy was the community it created. Owners formed clubs, traveled in caravans, and shared tips on modifications and adventures. GMC didn't just sell a vehicle, they had unknowingly sparked a movement. To this day, groups of GMC motorhome enthusiasts gather across the country, proudly showing off machines that are nearly half a century old, but still as eye-catching as the day they rolled out of the factory. Of course, owning one wasn't without its quirks. The interior layouts varied wildly, some practical, others less so. Repairs could be expensive, and keeping a 12,000-pound V8-fed beast on the road required dedication. But for those who embraced it, the motorhome was more than worth the effort. In many ways, the GMC motorhome was America's answer to the Volkswagen bus. Not a cheap, compact counterculture icon, but a bold, full-sized statement of freedom, luxury, and self-expression, where the VW bus appealed to the hippie generation. The GMC spoke to families, adventurers, and dreamers who wanted comfort without sacrificing style, and by the late 70s, it seemed like the motorhome was unstoppable. It had the engineering, the cultural cachet, and the loyal following. For a brief, shining moment, General Motors wasn't just building cars. They were building dreams on wheels. But then, almost as suddenly as it arrived, the dream began to fade. Rising fuel prices, economic turmoil, and corporate decisions would all conspire to bring production to an end. The question was no longer whether the GMC motorhome could succeed. The question was, could it survive the storm of the late 1970s? By the mid-70s, the GMC motorhome wasn't just a vehicle, it was a status symbol on wheels. Families saw it as freedom, celebrities saw it as luxury, and Hollywood saw it as the perfect futuristic prop. Inside, it felt nothing like the cramped, boxy RVs of its rivals. The flat floor, wide windows, and customizable layouts made it feel like a rolling penthouse. Owners could design interiors with shag carpet, leather seating, full kitchens, even built-in bars. It was America's living room, with a V8 pomp. Culture loved it too. You saw it in films, in commercials, and even customized for NASA to transport astronauts. For a brief moment, this wasn't just an RV. It was the future of road travel. Families hit the highway, chasing sunsets. Retirees sold their houses and made the road their home. And everyone who saw one, whether parked at Disneyland or rolling through Yellowstone, stopped and stared. But as fast as the dream rose, storm clouds were forming on the horizon. Rising fuel prices, economic shifts, and new regulations were about to slam the brakes on GMC's futuristic gamble. By 1977, the dream began to crack. America was in the middle of a fuel crisis, and suddenly, a 12 miles per gallon motorhome didn't look so practical. Families who once dreamed of cross-country adventures now worried about filling the massive gas tank. At the same time, the RV market was shifting. Cheaper, boxy competitors flooded in, and GM realized that the motorhome, though iconic, wasn't profitable. It was expensive to build, and production numbers never matched expectations. By 1978, after just over 13,000 units, General Motors pulled the plug. No farewell campaign, no gradual phase-out. The motorhome simply disappeared. Dealers were left with unsold models, and fans felt abandoned. For many, it seemed like the end of a bold experiment. But little did anyone know, the GMC motorhome wasn't gone. It was just waiting for a second life. When GM quit, most assumed the motorhome would fade into history. But the opposite happened. Owners formed clubs, mechanics specialized in restoring them, and a cult following grew. Even today, nearly 80% of the original GMC motorhomes are still on the road. Fans upgrade them with modern engines, luxury interiors, and even electric conversions. They've become rolling time machines, blending 70s design with today's technology. Collector's prize. Filmmakers still feature them, and RV enthusiasts call it the most stylish motorhome ever built. For many, it represents the last time Detroit dared to dream big in the RV world. The motorhome didn't just survive, it became immortal. The GMC motorhome was never just about travel. It was about freedom, design, and the belief that the open road could feel like home. Though it lived for only 5 short years, its legend outlived every competitor. Today, when one rolls by, heads still turn. It doesn't look like a relic. It looks like the future, frozen in time, because sometimes the boldest experiments don't fade away. They become timeless icons.